everyone, and welcome. I'm Rita Turkowski, and I think a lot of you know me as the lead of the Oculus Start program, where over the last 5 years, thank you, but it's all about you. You guys have made us successful. You've made App Lab successful. You've made Oculus Start successful. So I want to welcome you to our panel today about accessing App Lab and making your app as successful as possible through using the features of App Lab. Now, after the launch of App Lab in early 2021, where we actually had about a dozen Start devs involved in the launch, I'm pleased to say, we were thrilled that so many developers adopted App Lab for their app's distribution and publishing platform. Initially, we expected the platform to be used primarily for experimentation and garnering user feedback. So today, I'll take a seat. So today, I've invited 3 developers who took their apps to App Lab for a variety of reasons, whether to continue polishing their app, growing a user community, experimenting, getting users to help them experiment with new features that they wanted to bring to their title, and overall look to create a meaningful user community, all the while gathering data that they could then use to further strategize their app business. So today, I'm super pleased to bring to you my panelists, and I will introduce them, and then we're going to jump right into questions. And a little bit later on in the hour, I welcome questions from you in the audience. All right, to my left, we have Scott Albright, CEO of Combat Waffle Studios, creators of Ghost of Tabor. On his left, we have Nanea Reeves, CEO of popular mindfulness application Trip. And on her left, I have Caristel Smith, CEO of Another Axiom, Chief Creative Officer of Another Axiom, in fact, creators and developers of Gorilla Tag. So now I'm going to hop right into my first question. I'll have a few questions, then we'll hop into the audience questions, and then we'll come back here for one last question. Okay, so from the beginning, and I'm going to start with you, Scott. What stage of development were you at with Ghost of Tabor when you decided or realized that App Lab would be a good place for you to start your journey towards publishing?
Yeah, we actually, from the very beginning, knew we wanted to go to App Lab. We had so many different interactive systems that have never been tested in VR that we really needed that user feedback from the community that we were growing. So really, without that user feedback, we would not have been able to grow in our different stages of life cycle to closed beta to now, or closed alpha now to closed beta, or open, yeah. So App Lab is the first choice we'd ever made, and we knew from the very beginning that's where we had to go.
No, App Lab was already available when you started the process?
Yeah, so we actually did not start working on our game until April 1st of last year, and we launched on March 18th on App Lab of this year. So 11 months, yeah.
Well, quite the journey before you even there.
It's been fun.
Wow. And Nanea, your story is a little bit different. Can you tell us how you got into App Lab?
We launched Trip in 2019 in December, straight on the App Store. We would have definitely loved to have had App Lab for early feedback, but I think one of the benefits of being on a gaming platform is gamers are the best early audience because they will tell you immediately how much you suck. And then write these long missives of everything you need to do to the tiniest detail on how to be better. And having that feedback loop, if anybody's been using Trip from that time, we did suck. And we've gotten better, and we still have a lot of work to do. So it gives us an arena to really workshop new features. I'll just give you one tiny example. Most recently, we launched a whole new breath detection AI that uses the IMU on the headset to recognize the head movement pattern when you inhale and exhale. And so on App Lab, we launched a little primitive-looking bot that trained our AI model.
Oh, wow.
And we invited a small group of our session leaders that do live meditation and Horizon Worlds come just breathe through that thing and train the AI, and then we opened it up to broader community. So it's been an excellent feature development ecosystem for us.
How did you get the users into App Lab? How did you find them or market to them?
For us, we went through our customer support channel.
Right.
First and said, would you be willing to participate in a beta community? And the response was really terrific. But then also we started to look at our usage data, and the users have been using our app like 12 months or longer. And last month, in our paying users, that was 42%.
Oof.
So, and that kind of retention does take a long time to harden, so another good use case for AppLab. But we just contacted those users and said, do you want to help us make Trip better? And I think that's been one of the big drivers of why we're so popular. So,
That's amazing.
yeah, we really appreciate it.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. And Carousel, tell us a little bit about your early App Lab journey. And then we'll get a little later into what happened later.
Yeah, so initially, Gorilla Tag was on Steam and SideQuest. And the problem with SideQuest and Discord before then is, you have to ask people, hey, here's a new update, can you go download it? It's a really intrusive process, and it takes a lot of time. And every time you update, you're kind of leaving people behind. So I was really excited to get onto AppLab purely to make that process easier for the people who are playing, because now I can, have access to the entire structure of being able to push out updates and all that kind of thing. So I was able to really rapidly update my iteration cycle because I was just trying to get as many things into the game, update things, fix bugs, deal with server issues. So being able to access all of those things was kind of the most important thing for me. So after having been just on SideQuest and then on AppLab, I could feel the difference. It was really
You mean you
big
weren't
deal.
blocked by Meta on going on the App Store?
Yeah, we should address that. So along that vein, did you prepare any, and this kind of segues into my next question anyway, did you feel that you should be preparing any promotional materials? I know you and I have talked about TikTok and other places, but can you tell the audience a little bit about what that journey was like for you? Like a new game, and how do you market it?
Yeah, it was interesting because, the Gorilla Tag just started as something I was working on my own, so I didn't really have, I didn't have marketing experience, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, still pretty much don't, but what was really great about it is being able to form that connection with the community. It's the community members are the ones who really kind of build that marketing effort, at least for us. I didn't even have it in the back of my mind, the idea to reach out to influencers or whoever. But there was actually one case where a popular streamer, Soda Poppin', played my game for a little bit, and I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, this guy's playing my game. It's gonna do huge things, and then nothing. There was no real change in the player population or any of that. But, the response on TikTok and stuff from people who genuinely enjoy the game, want to share it, are interested in it, they become your biggest advocates. And now there's a whole creator community around Gorilla Tag, but it's interesting to see how they grew out of the game. They weren't existing influencers who moved to Gorilla Tag. So I think that really shows the strength of the community, and really just if you serve their needs, then they'll give back.
Right, absolutely. Scott, you and I talked about this as well. You had an interesting journey with the outside marketing partner, and then you brought it all in-house. Can you tell the audience how that worked for you and how it worked on AppLab as well?
Yeah, so we had actually hired a couple different marketing partners. So I come from a military background, and our first marketing partner was in the firearms business, and that's what our game is, right? So you need guns in our game. But then we moved to a VR-specific marketing partner, and they were amazing, but we really needed to be able to hone in our message a lot faster. So we brought everything in-house. We actually hired an in-house guy that just managed our TikTok, and he somehow nailed that TikTok algorithm and has held on to it this entire time since we launched. And we just watched our game explode. I mean, it was massive, nothing we ever expected. I think if you can figure that out, they will find you on AppLab, but you're going to have to make a video to show them how to find you on AppLab. And that was what was so key about, like Carousel said, building our community. We didn't use influencers. We didn't pay influencers. We went organic grassroots with it and did it ourselves. So my suggestion is bring it in-house. It's worth hiring that person to work with you directly.
Nanea, did you have a similar marketing strategy?
We do a lot of marketing. One thing, I was on the Today Show last November, and 85% of the people who came to our website didn't have a headset. So, and we have lots of evidence that people will buy a headset to use Trip, and you see that with some of the fitness apps as well. And so I think getting out on all the different channels. So we do our top of the funnel marketing. There's an ad unit on Facebook ads that you can target Oculus owners.
Okay.
And that has been how we do a lot of our marketing on Instagram and Facebook for top of the funnel. And then we do some bottom of the funnel Google paid ads. Word of mouth, though, has been really good. And one of the things that we've found is a key driver to get people back into our app is we have a mobile app. And we launched Trip with the mobile app. And if you think about it, VR devices, it's very much a pull interface. You have to decide to take the headset, put it on your head, usually on the weekends or at night, launch the app. But if you have the mobile device, it becomes a push interface. That's really important to like keep your streak going, or this new experience just launched. And I highly recommend that people on App Lab, on the App Store, do this because you do need that touch point to drive engagement. Because people aren't walking around all day long with the headsets yet on their head. We saw today there's a future of that. But it's been a key driver of our engagement, and I think that's why we have long-term retention as well.
I think it's really interesting that you brought up mobile because, believe it or not, that actually leads me to another question that I wanted to discuss with you. And Carousel, you and I had discussed this a while back as well. How do each of you think VR is a different publishing medium than others? There's definitely different strategies, things that may have worked in mobile that don't work in VR, or things that work for finding users in VR that you probably don't even have that opportunity to do in mobile because, say, mobile has just such a huge audience. And so, Carousel, I'll start with you. We had touched on that. How do you think VR is opening up a whole new medium for both developers to publish to as well as users to consume from?
Yeah, and that's a great topic. This is one of the things that I can't shut up about, so I love that you asked. But yeah, it's really different. I think that a lot of people kind of approach it as, oh, you know, initially VR is for video games, or it's for consuming content, or it's watching things. But really, I think that it really needs to be considered its own thing. Like your point, Nanea, about how it needs to be a pull, I think that that's something that people have kind of like missed out on a little bit. I think they think of it as, oh, they see things as, well, it's kind of a hassle to put it on your head. You have to remember to charge it. You might be sweaty afterwards. There are all these negatives that you think about it. But the reality is that it is such a powerful device to be able to put somebody into a world that you've created entirely for them. And the strength of that should be emphasized. And the way that I like to think of it is that I want to create a place that people feel like they just want to exist in that world. And I think it's really important to figure out how to do that is hard. Like, that's not an easy problem to solve. But something that was really good about being on App Lab early is that with Gorilla Tag, you know, my expectations and hopes were like, hey, you know, I know this is a really fun game. I have a fun time playing it. I've got a strong Discord community that really cares about it. And if I can make it so that there are a few full games going on at any point, I'll consider that a success. And obviously, it was a lot more successful than that. But if that's had been what I was able to hit on, then I would have been like, this is awesome, and then I wouldn't have quit my day job. You know, it was a really good opportunity to figure out what works. And once I figured that out, then I could kind of focus on it because it's such a new medium that nobody knows the rules, right? Like, I don't like when people talk about the future of VR because nobody knows
They don't know the future.
what it's going to be exactly.
We actually talk about that a lot at work, is that we're defining this as we go along. Right. We're defining, as Chris Pruitt, our senior director, would say, we're defining the grammar. We have to write it. Or we don't have to write, I mean, we're writing it as a community, as an ecosystem. And Scott, along the same vein, we talked about this with Kirsten as well. How do you feel about this being a whole new medium and the holy grail of something brand new?
How do you follow that?
I don't know. I mean,
That's my question. I mean, he literally
All
speaks. You should have went first, Nene. I'm nervous.
And we're going to get back to you on this, Nene.
It's really hard to follow Carousel and give you any more information because he really sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
The only thing I did differently was I, unlike you, quit my day job and said, hey, I've got 1 year to do this with
all
funding,
in.
and I'm in. And you're not going to stop me. is sort of the route I took.
I was
Sometimes having a backup plan is not a good idea, right?
Yeah, I feel like that one question alone makes me want to ask like 6 more questions, but I won't in the interest of time. And by the way, right before I'm going to get into our last question before we get into Q&A, so please feel free to queue up at the mic.
Can I take
We'll-
a stab at that last
Oh yeah,
question? though?
sure. I'll back up. Go ahead.
I think when you think of VR meditation, immediately people think, oh, I'll be on a beach and a Celtic voice will tell me to inhale and exhale.
Right.
And we kind of went, we are not simulating reality. We want to stimulate new reactions. And so, you know, what can you experience in VR that you can experience in real life? And we said, instead of telling you to inhale and exhale, can we show you your breath?
Right.
Make you float up to another dimension, because there's no gravity in VR.
Right.
So make your own rules. And I still think, though, even in our app, we haven't nailed spatial design yet. All the app menus look like mobile apps floating in space. And, you know, are there different ways to do spatial design? And that's an opportunity, I think, for a lot of innovation that, as an industry, we need to focus on, because it's a new medium, and the web browser approach, I think it's dull.
No, that's a really good point. And actually, in our Oculus Start program, we often try to steer devs to not using like text menus,
Right.
to try to guide with diagenic design and in general just to guide through story and narrative as much as you can. As I was just saying though, please feel free to queue up at the mic, because I'm going to hop into the last question for the panel, and we'll talk to you guys for a while, and then we're going to come back with one final question, I think. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Scott. What has been so far your biggest learning from using App Lab? Like, what's your one big takeaway for why it was good for Ghost of Tabor?
Honestly, I don't without Lab, I mean, App Lab as a whole, I don't have the experiences that they do from before App Lab. So
Right.
what I know is what all of you all know now sitting in this room of App Lab. And without App Lab, there would be no Ghost of Tabor, there would be no Combat Waffle Studios. We wouldn't have grown from 8 people to 34 people overnight. So App Lab, to me, I think the biggest thing I can take away is just the visibility. I felt like was the biggest thing I learned, that we had to produce ourselves.
Right.
And again, if you build your community and you make something that people want to play,
Yes.
they'll play it, but you have to find the people. They're not just going to find you because you make it. So build a community, a massive community, as quickly as you can, and nail social media, and you'll flourish.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Nanea, any thoughts?
Well, you know, because App Lab wasn't available when we started Trip, and we also took the brunt of being the very first subscription app on the Quest App Store. So we got all this 1-star hate that was, I mean, it took 2 years to reverse those 1 stars. And the amount of work that our CS team had to do, I think you know, we had people who loved our app, but to really unravel if we had had visibility into the impact earlier of that decision, it was the right decision, because a healthy ecosystem, part of the reason why Trip has been able to raise venture capital is because we had recurring revenue. So we knew that was the right decision for us at the time. The other thing too, there's something about the subscription business model. I know a lot of people in this room will hate this, but it keeps you honest as a content creator, to keep your app fresh, to keep it evolved, because as long as you continue to provide value, people feel good about paying you for it. And as soon as you stop doing that, they have the right to stop paying. And so in many ways, like, if we incorporate advertising or some of those other things that turn our users into the product, I felt like it wasn't the right approach for us to build trust. And so it was really hard for us to earn back the trust.
Right.
And if App Lab had been there, we would have been able to workshop that a little bit better and figure out how to message around it.
That's really good to know. And Kirsta?
Yeah, so a few things. One of the biggest one is, you know, the people, because of the issues with App Lab, right, and visibility and people finding it and stuff, the people who are there, like, really love what you're doing. Like, they are the diehards, and they really care. So one of the things that we've done recently with Gorilla Tag is we've created what we call our Alpha Squad, which is a group of people that we send out, new patches to earlier, and they give us a little bit of feedback. They help a lot with bug testing because these are the people who know the ins and outs of your game better than you do. But that's something that we only did more recently. I kind of wish we had done it a lot longer ago. It would have really helped. So that's something that we're doing with our next game. Just the project name is A2 right now, real name to come later. But we're trying to get that process started really early. We started working on it just a few months ago, and we've already started incorporating people into testing it out and trying it and giving us feedback and all these things from super early on. So that's really important for us to get the confidence that we're heading in the right direction and that we're getting feedback from the community early so that we can make sure we're going in the right direction. And the other thing for Gorilla Tag is one of the things that kind of didn't happen for a long time is graduating to the main Quest store. And the biggest part of that was that I was sitting in a room by myself 24 hours a day. I did not have the bandwidth to try and move on to the main store, all the stuff you got to do, get ready for it, try and get a trailer out there, professionalize it. I was just kind of heads down focused on what I was doing. But what was really exciting is that once I was in a place where I could move to the store, one of the questions I had was like, is there even any point? Like, we're successful on App Lab, like, you kind of only get one opportunity to launch your game, and it's been out there for a while, so are we even going to get any value from it? And we really did. We had a super successful launch, and the trajectory of the app has really increased since it was released on the main store. So it's really nice to know that that opportunity is still there and it wasn't squandered or anything by just being on App Lab, So taking that route instead of going straight to the store, it didn't feel like we were missing out on anything. So that gives me confidence, because if it hadn't gone that well, then it's like, well, maybe App Lab kind of saps some of your momentum, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, App Lab is really unique. It's unique for me working with developers on their App Lab journey. And it's not black and white. And a lot of times I have to answer questions to say, no, it's not that simple. It's not like, okay, you have 100 users on App Lab and you're going to have 10,000 on the store. It's like the metrics, like I get asked, how long does it take? And I'm like, there is no secret path. There is no secret sauce. It's a lot of the nuance of everything that we're kind of discussing today. But thank you for that feedback, Carousel. I think that's really helpful. And now we'll take a question from the audience.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is Shirish from Challenge Box Fitness. Especially congratulations for all of you guys, especially Gorilla Tag. I see a lot of momentum there. I play it as well, and Trip too. Similar to you, I'm a solo developer working on my own app. It's a fitness app. I don't have bandwidth to actually go and market the product outside. On TikTok, I spoke to Rita multiple times on Discord too. Most of my time goes into building the app and creating new experiences. So would it be actually nice if somebody searches for fitness or workout on the main store to show more apps than just one single App Lab app? Because that doesn't feel fair to all the developers, because I'm competing with Supernatural and FitXR and other apps.
Doesn't the store have that feature though now, where it's recommending App Lab apps?
Yes. Things are slowly changing, and
I've
there's
seen
been
that.
subtle changes in discoverability, but your feedback is awesome and important. So we should definitely document this better. So I think it's like a gradual stage. It's like if someone is vaguely searching for Challenge Box and not using keywords for either the title or the app itself, then if you're still in App Lab, it's not going to show up. The store is heavily curated, and you all know that. But if they're actually searching for challenge this or challenge that and not just Challenge Box, that I believe is probably subtly changing. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to check. But we are now showing App Lab discoverability for the exact matches in the carousel at the top. I actually went and checked this the other day.
Yeah, so
with the
people
store.
usually search something like fitness or workout, and then they see all the results. So
Right.
As of now, it's like 1 or 2 apps shown up from the App Lab section at the bottom. But if more apps are shown, I think it's more fair for like indie developers.
Yes.
It helps all of us.
One thing I noticed for a while is before Gorilla Tag was on the main store, I noticed if you search Gorilla,
Yeah.
it's got a lot of apps on the Quest store that didn't have the word Gorilla in them.
At all. I know.
It was,
At
yeah,
all.
it's evolving.
I saw an app do that with our name, and there was not even a T in their title, and I went, well, if that's allowed, I'm gonna put Beat Saber as my keyword. Right?
I'm surprised more people don't do that one way or the other. More developers don't do that.
I want to use Gorilla Tag as my keyword.
Okay, thank you.
you, guys.
Thank you for your question, and we definitely consider your feedback super important. Okay, next question.
Great. Question for Carousel.
Oh, could you please, you're Gods of Gravity, I know who you are. Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. For sure. I'm Jack from Turkowski Games, working on Gods of Gravity.
Welcome.
And yeah, so I had a question about TikTok growth for games on App Lab. Of course, Gorilla Tag was greatly propelled by the community turned content creators. Do you think if you outlined incentives, like in-game incentives, from an early standpoint, for example, post a video that gets past this threshold, you're rewarded with X item in game or X achievement in game, would that have accelerated Gorilla Tag's growth?
That's an interesting question. So I feel the position I'm in, I do not consider myself an expert in a lot of spheres. And I know for myself, when I was building Gorilla Tag, all I knew is that the game was really fun and it was really good. And I consider myself primarily a gamer. Like yeah, that's it. And so when I was building it, I didn't have a sense of, I only made a TikTok to make sure that people didn't squat on the username. So I can't speak to exactly what will work and what won't. We've recently started a creator program we call the Finger Painters to try and involve people more. But the biggest thing that I would caution is making sure that you have the right focus. And this is just my personal experience, is that if I felt like I only had so many hours in the day to work on my game, and the only thing I know how to do is to make the game better, I would rather spend most of my time doing that than marketing things that I don't know what would have worked. Because I think that's a great point, is that it's very possible you might get that kind of result by encouraging people to make stuff. But then, are people only making videos because they're going to get something out of it? Is the passion that someone has for making a video the same if they think they're going to get a reward, or if they think they just want to share the game they love with other people, So I hope that doesn't sound too conceited, but yeah, I just don't know anything about marketing. So I just want to make the video game.
Do you have any advice for Jack?
Yeah. So are you focusing on bigger content creators, like promoting your stuff, or are you looking at smaller 1-2 followers? What's your?
Yeah, I mean, mainly we want to drive like organic UA through, not necessarily paying top creators to make content, but to making our community more broadly active on TikTok and posting and getting it saturated through that.
So I can tell you what we did, and it was my approach from the start. Was we had a lot of the larger content creators that, of course, they want to be paid, and I appreciate content creators of all sizes because they make our community grow. We actually ignored all of those people. We blacklisted them. They weren't allowed to play our alpha. They weren't allowed to make content. They weren't allowed to sign an NDA with us. Nothing. We focused on everyone that was 100 followers or less, and we let those guys go wild for months. And they cranked out 20 videos a week. Where your larger content creators that you're going to pay, when you're a smaller studio starting up, they're going to come in, they're going to make 1-2 videos on you, and they're going to vanish. And there's a ton of studios that do this, and you see it when they drop their games. These creators make 1 video. Let these smaller guys come in and just flood the market and talk about your game, because they are going to be passionate about it, and they are going to grow you crazy amounts. And you're also going to help make some of their streaming and content creative careers, which we've seen from some of the creators that we used.
When I was at Machinima, I was COO there. We used to see a lot of that. They were one of the first monetized channels or networks on YouTube, a gaming network, and we would find the middle tier of influencers in aggregate would generate more than like paying PewDiePie or Toby Turner or one of those larger influencers. So because they are passionate. Yeah.
I think that's actually super helpful. Thank you. We'll take a question from Toast.
Hi there. Yeah, Nathan from Toast Interactive. I just wanted to know if the panel had any insights on pricing strategy for AppLab. Is there an argument to discount? And then,
Oh, that's a good question. Who wants to take
Look, there are mobile apps that are audio only that are more expensive than our app.
Yes.
And so the initial thinking around the App Store pricing of, oh, it's only 10 hours of gameplay and console games are $60 and they're 30 hours on average. Let's just make the highest price point $19. It has been so difficult. And so that's just not even on App Lab. So it's been, I think, something to really think about. How do you build a marketplace, whether it's App Lab and the App Store, et cetera, an ecosystem where real businesses can emerge and grow and thrive on your platform. And so I think there's a lot to discuss there as a community with all of the app stores in the ecosystem, not, you know, including Meta, and figure out how do we take this to the next level. Because it's really hard for a company to really grow and scale with a one-time paid download or even in-app purchasing that you're driving without the big scale that a free-to-play offering really, really needs for long-term viability.
Yeah, it's really tough to know. One thing I don't recommend is Gorilla Tag was initially free to play, and there were no IAPs allowed in App Lab at all. So don't do that. But
Still true?
No, it's good now.
actually,
Yeah.
He and I worked on that together. You were a driving
I was-
function for us to get
yeah,
IP in App Lab.
you know, I had some sales on Steam, but the player base on Quest kept going up, and the server costs kept going up, and so the month I was in the red on server costs, eventually the IAP
I
came
remember
through, so
that.
was
That's what I'm talking about.
very close. But yeah, it's tough, and I only use that example to say that part of the reason why that happened is Oculus didn't know if that was even important, right? Like free to play didn't seem like the way to monetize things. They were generally going for, you know,
Yes.
you pay the title $10, $20.
We were learning the same time from our
Exactly.
developers. You teach us and inform us as much as
So it's
best practices.
that's one of the questions that kind of keeps you up at night, I think. Unfortunately, this is a long way of saying I don't have a lot of advice. It's a really hard question.
I will say pricing is a science, and it's really good to A/B test. We built our own A/B testing framework on our upsell screen, and we're running multiple versions of it at any given time. You look at web approaches to that, and you can learn a lot because it is a science, even how you display the offer, the color of your buttons. Orange will perform better than green, we have seen. And so there's a lot to it. And
Like A/B testing is always
yeah,
a
A/B
wonderful
testing.
thing.
And I'm glad to see the App Store finally put in A/B testing on the store assets as well.
Yeah. We'll take the next question, David.
Really quick, there
sorry,
there
go ahead.
is success in all different approaches, right? We're free to play. You guys are paid. You guys are subscription. So ultimately, you can make it work, whatever you choose. Try to understand what you're trying to do, and yeah, take that into account. But good luck.
I just want to add one last thing. Just now, last few weeks, we are testing with App Lab developers, beta testing for subscriptions in App Lab. So if you are interested in that, come talk to me afterwards, and I'll get you set up for testing our beta for
Yeah,
App
and
Lab
I'm free. If
subscriptions.
anybody wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to share some learnings with the developer community on all the mistakes we've made and what we got right.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nanea. David?
Hey, David, Theory Studios. Great panel. I love business, and I love that intersection of shipping a product and all the chaos that happens. So let's go to that first month, whether it's maybe a few days before launch, definitely the few days after launch. Just talk to me about that first month. Any kind of learnings that you can share, as many of us are approaching our first launch. What can you share about your first launch in that first month?
Yeah, just be prepared for everything to go wrong. Everything. Just
Great.
No matter what you prepare for, it's going to go the opposite way. And at the end of the day, remember to take a second to just breathe. And we had to learn this as a studio when we launched. We didn't have a lot of problems, but we did have a few with server issues with AWS and things like that. And we just had to just take a step back and just remember we're people. We can get through it. We just got to bound. I don't know how big your teams are, but just bound together and you'll get through it. But what's going to happen is going to happen, and bad things are going to happen no matter what when you launch a game massive to like the masses out there in the stratosphere. So be prepared.
The most important advice I would give you is to make sure your devs spend time instrumenting your app client with data hooks so that you can track all the usage in your app and know what they're clicking on, et cetera, because you will learn all the things that you didn't do right and what you did get right, and then you'll know how to iterate the next version. And it's surprising to me how many people don't do that when they develop their apps and they go, how many people did this? And you realize you cannot retrieve data you don't insert. And that is like, so to spend the time to just go, what do we want to track and instrument it? And I think you guys have some data tools too now, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But thank you, David, for your question.
One thing I found really, really valuable is that I had a pretty substantial Discord community going on before I put the game out. They were already playing the game pretty much as it was going to be released. I didn't have any special, patch or whatever available. But having that solid basis of community helped with the initial momentum. People were really excited about it. I had already shared a lot, and I knew that I had a decent player base, and so they were able to help kind of push things forward. And I think that momentum really helped kind of kick things off. And then everything went completely insane, and I lost a lot of sleep, and it was hard to keep up with stuff. But yeah, you want to put yourself in that good position at the beginning by getting people interested, getting people on board. The actual launch period, the day you launch, you shouldn't be too surprised about what happens. You should already have a sense of, hey, I think people are going to like this, or maybe we're going to hope for a slow burn and try and build up things over time.
Thank you, Carousel. Thank you, David. Next question.
Hi, I'm Will, owner of Lost Frame Development. I just want to say thank you, Rita, for an amazing talk setup. And so my question is, you mentioned how you use TikTok, I believe, pre-release for Ghost of Tabor. And with my experience with releasing on Steam, I had several TikToks that went over 4 million views, and I was able to do the #1 rule of marketing strategies, call to action, to gain wish lists, obviously, through Steam. And yesterday I voiced my concern about there not being a wish list system through App Lab, so I'm curious how you overcame that, and if what your call to action was to retain those viewers with terrible attention spans.
Great question.
We call those Gorilla Tech kids.
Yeah. Yikes.
So we really didn't have any way to remedy it. We like Carousel had a massive Discord community that just blew up overnight. And all we did was we made sure that we were always clear in our communication, especially with the Quest. We had a Quest tag, a reaction role, to where they always knew what was happening when they could buy the game, and our community managers just made sure they were always in their ears. Hey, we're launching on this day. We're launching on this day. I mean, we didn't even know we were going to App Lab until like 4 days before we went to App Lab. We were waiting on approval. So it was like one of those things where even though that was happening, the Quest community can turn on you so quickly, much like the PCVR community can in the reviews. We were just open and honest with them the entire time. Like, this is what we're working on. These are the problems we're having. And as soon as we know, you will know. Even if it's bad news, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm a very blunt person, and I think you have to be. People respect that in this business. So that's my best suggestion is just always communicate with the Quest people directly, since you don't have the tools to do that on App Lab.
So just to clarify, your call to action was to get people mostly in your Discord community?
Yeah, so we still do
TikToks?
that. We get them in Discord. I mean, we're at 63,000 now, and still growing about 1,000 a week. And we still do that. Every video, we go to our Discord. If you have problems, go to our Discord. Our community managers on social media push, hey, if you need support, go to our Discord, talk to our support people, or email support. And then our email support says, hey, you should come to Discord and open a ticket because it's a lot faster for us to solve it. So we try to keep everything in that one central area.
Sorry to just keep rattling stuff off, but my final question for you is for the TikTok. Did you have, like, in the TikTok video, like, join the Discord, or did you have the link? You did? Okay.
Yeah, so we did. We didn't run any paid advertising. We never have on any form of social media. we would always make sure that we had a couple different variations of come join our community, our Discord, and we would post those randomly, once a week, every 2 weeks. And then we would also put in the comments our Discord link. We had our link tree. The guys over at Impact VR, they set up our link tree really nice and stuff like that when we were working with them, and they helped us navigate and do that big push.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Will, for your question.
Thank you.
We have time, hopefully, for 2 more questions if we move
Okay.
really quickly. But
Hi,
Thank
my
you.
name is Chinami Michaels. I work with Eliza Nipsher at Meet Benjamin as the UX designer. And you talked about spatial menus, and I was curious how you possibly bring down iteration time to deploy that. I talked with one of your developers, actually, in the security line, Kestrel, about that. And I can talk about it with you guys later, maybe, because I realize now it's not directly.
oh no, it's a
AppLab
great
related.
question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, we had this conversation with my team, and I said, where are we landing the user after they open our app? And they said, in our menu. And I went, exactly. Like, what is the space? And then are there different ways to bring up or discover content? I'm really excited about AI-driven events and navigation impact on design, so it's much more personalized to the user. So you will see some of that launch in Trip. We're going to test some stuff out in mobile first. But I think a more intelligent navigation is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I would consider myself pretty radical in VR in terms of like UI and UX and stuff. My philosophy is there should probably be none ever.
No, I love that.
But yeah, it is difficult because you have to kind of think of new ways of doing things because we don't have established languages and verbs for doing stuff. But one of the advantages of it is that it means that your UI can, in a way, also on its own be gameplay. Like I have a dumb little computer that you can go to and you can kind of hunt and peck with your fingers, and it is objectively slow and hard to use. But it's also kind of fun. You get to press the buttons and they make a little tick and you feel a little vibration. So I think it's one of those things in VR where if the way you approach it is, okay, I'm making a video game, so I need my title screen and my main menu, you're actually building a lot of assumptions into how you should build that even before you've started. And I think it's really important to VR to start from the absolute basics, work from first principles, rethink everything. And that part has been the most fun for me, just being able to figure out what the rules are and play with that.
Yeah, it's huge. Opportunity to make your mark, for sure.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone. It's almost time to wrap up, and I know we have a few others that have questions, and we will be outside the room. But I also, from these wonderful discussions, have one last question for our panel. And I'm going to start with you, Scott, and then go down the row here. But if you had one piece of advice to give someone just starting out, you're just creating your next game or a new game, and most likely you're going to start out by going on AppLab, what one piece of advice would you give a developer that you've learned from experimenting in AppLab and using AppLab? Just someone starting from scratch. What advice would you give?
I feel like AppLab for a brand new user is pretty self-explanatory. Like I don't really have any advice. I think my biggest piece of advice would just be make a game that people want to play. Don't be a gamer. Remember that you're a gamer at heart. Don't keep making the same 5v5 asset flip games over and over and over. Make something unique, like a gorilla tag. Who paved the way for every one of us in this room. I applaud Carousel for that. He's brilliant. Just
Thank you.
Be that. Be something new and fresh.
And your thoughts?
Well, I would like to say, to have an idea and build it and bring it to an audience is a really magical experience, and it's incredibly hard. And a lot of people don't do it, and you are all part of that percentage of the population who can actually do that. And to have the passion around the idea that you want to bring forth and be able to iterate and get that feedback from a community, I think if it has to be something you feel strongly about, because it's hard. People are going to call your baby ugly, and you have to also make them feel heard. And it's a process, but it's really noble, because a lot of people in the world sit back and criticize other people's efforts. Really easy to do, especially on social media. So the fact that you're putting yourself out there and making yourself vulnerable to all of that, it's just something I think to stand proud in. I'm Hawaiian. We have this statement, "Onipa'a." It means to stand firm.
Proud.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say it's hard to know if something's good. Show it to people as soon as possible,
Yeah.
and they'll tell you.
Yes, thank you. I hope our panel today helped to demystify App Lab use cases a bit for you. And as I mentioned, we'll still be around to talk and answer your questions for the rest of Connect. Thank you so much for attending. We appreciate you.